Hello, this is Haley, and you are watching a special report on the Oklahoma 5.6 magnitude earthquake. So, if you watched the screencast yesterday, you might have heard me, cover Oklahoma's big earthquake. Well, as it turns out, that earthquake was a foreshock to this earthquake. So, if you're not familiar with the concept of foreshock, main shock, and aftershock, in this case, the one that I talked about yesterday was actually a foreshock because it was weaker than the one that happened last night. So that was the main shock. And then, fingers crossed, so long as this ends up being the largest earthquake that Oklahoma has, everything after this 5.6 will be an aftershock. So, as you can see on earthquakestoday.org, this remains the strongest earthquake in the last 24 hours. And then, if you go to the by region page, this one up here, Oklahoma is actually number 2 today for the most earthquaked area. I'm not sure what the word would be, with 15 in the last 24 hours. So we're going to move on. I created these lovely slides, or something, I have no idea. Prague, Oklahoma, I think that's how it's pronounced. 5.6 earthquake. Happened November 5th, 2011 at 10:53 and 10 seconds p.m. local time. Some stats on the quake. 5.6 magnitude is 5 kilometers deep, also known as 3.1 miles, 10:53 p.m. local time. And the human factor, which I believe MMI is the modified Mercalli intensity, rated it a 7, which is actually fairly significant. If I remember correctly, the Turkey earthquake was rated a 9, to give you an idea of how it goes to 10. But so the huge Turkey earthquake in recent times was a 9. This ended up being rated a 7. So a 7 on the MMI scale is officially defined as very strong shaking with moderate damage. So who felt it? Within 12 hours, 58,000 people had made a report to the USGS, which I believe stands for United States Geological Survey. And to give you some comparison of when I looked at the page, 58,000 people, that is huge. Like, for instance, San Francisco had an earthquake recently, and 2,600 people had reported. 2,600, 58,000 people. So there was a huge amount of people who felt this earthquake. It was felt by people in 52% of the lower 48 states. 25 separate states had reports. And you can't say that about California earthquakes. And as I understand it, to give you a little bit of a backstory or whatnot, California is built upon many different fault lines. So underneath, the ground is very segmented and broken up. So that all of that separation tends to dampen, if that would be the word, the seismic waves as they travel. Whereas, as I understand it, in the Midwest and the East Coast, the ground very much, I guess, is continuous, or however that would be phrased. So you get an earthquake that happens in one location, and it can travel, the seismic waves from it can travel quite far. And as you can see, it did travel quite far. The farthest felt was 1,553 kilometers away, also known as 965 miles. That's crazy. The farthest felt it locations, this is the top 5 I pulled from the list as of when I ran the data. I'm sure I'm going to mispronounce this. Coraopolis, Pennsylvania, 1,553. Badger, Minnesota, 1,480. Cleveland, Ohio, 1,472. Indian Trail, North Carolina, 1,468. Akron, Ohio, 1,464 kilometers away. So that's just crazy. Most intense locations. So this is going back to how we said it was an MMI of 7. Well, as it turns out, it was a 6.7 that was rounded up to a 7. So this is who felt the most shaking and the most damage, is basically what this. And this is all of the people who felt it at 6.0 or above. So as you can see, very close to the epicenter, unsurprisingly, 6.7. And then the top 3 were all fairly close. But what I found even more interesting was how far away it was felt intensely. Like we've got Indianola, Oklahoma. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. 96 kilometers away. But then the next one, Ringgold, Texas, 221 kilometers. Atlanta, Kansas. I did not know that Atlanta was in Kansas. Hey, you learn something new every day, right? 214. And Rosebud, Arkansas, 428 kilometers away, and they felt it as a 6.0. So, I guess that was the end of the presentation. Obviously, I should have written an outro slide, but I didn't. So, if you want more information on this, you can go to the USGS site. You can go hang out at earthquakestoday.org. I also do a daily screencast on the weather and on earthquakes. And speaking of the weather, Oklahoma, you are in the hot zone for severe weather tomorrow. So, you know, hey, it's just a 1-2 punch or something. We're going to give you an earthquake one day and maybe a tornado the next. So anyway, I hope if you were affected by the earthquake, I hope everything returns to normal for you soon. Hope there wasn't too terrible of damage. And I hope you can enjoy the rest of your weekend, I guess. Now you all take it easy.